Thank you, Luis, and hi, everyone. Nice to see all of you on this Monday evening and seeing some friendly faces in the attendance. So, yeah, today, as Luis mentioned, we're definitely very excited about what is going to be covered today and hoping that you see the value. If you know already about service design, then learn a little bit more about what the community does in other part of the world, what is happening with the conference and so on. But I want to start thanking Luis for providing us with this space and for all the support to make this happen. For those that do not know me, so I'm local to Calgary, Alberta. I'm a service designer. I am part of the service design community as I am an ambassador promoting the conference that is going to happen in October in Berlin. And I also volunteer with Calgary UX. My LinkedIn profile, it's as well as Luis. It's in the slides. So if you wanted to connect, please do so. And just a quick overview of what we're going to be covering today. So I'll pass it on to Bernie and Thomas in a minute for them to introduce themselves. Then we're going to do an icebreaker activity. Then we're going to talk about the service design network, and then we're going to get a sneak peek into what Bernie is going to present in Berlin at the conference, as well as Thomas in his workshop that he's going to be running there in person. So we're going to get that great visibility of their amazing topics. And then they're going to tell us about their experience attending these conferences in the past and what you can get from this type of event. Then we're going to talk about some resources, some discounts, and then opportunities to collaborate with the Service Design Network. We are going to pass it on to a quick Q&A, and then there's going to be a special announcement. So you may have seen Luis talking a little bit about that in the meetup group. So if you haven't, then please don't leave because it's going to be very interesting. Then with that, I'm going to pass it on to Bernadette and Thomas. See if you can please introduce yourselves.
Shall I start, Thomas? You're muted. Hello, my name's Bernadette or Bernie. I'm one of the speakers at the conference in Berlin next month now. It's already September. I'm going to be speaking about creating a gender inclusive campus or designing for that. I'm someone who's been involved in service design since 2012, and I've been working in higher education settings for about almost 20 years now. As an employee, designing student experiences, and now as a consultant designing experiences. And I'm very excited to be here, and I'm going to hand off to Thomas.
Hi, everybody. I'm Thomas Brandenburg. I am a service designer, lead service designer out of Chicago. I've been practicing design for about 20 years. In service design, I've been in the retail space, automobile space, and more recently in the energy space. And on top of that, I have the pleasure of running the SDN chapter in Chicago for the last 7 years and part of the accreditation board. And I also do training and education. I'm very fond of teaching classes in design. Yes, that's a little bit about me.
Thank you so much for the great introduction. So with that, now what we're going to do, just to learn a little bit more about what the audience knows about service design and get your input, please click on, if you don't mind, just put in the link in the chat, please. Or you can also scan the code and the QR code and enter your answers. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna start sharing the responses. And then as soon as we start getting some answers, we'll can able to see it. So put the link in the chat as well. So yeah, the first question is, in one word, what is your idea of community? So we're hearing togetherness, sharing, belonging, connection, convivencia, some Spanish speaker in the crowd, people. Does someone want to come off mute and maybe give us their impression of community? Okay, so we're gonna go with the next one. And is, how can a community help you know more about service design? And same thing, if you prefer to share live your input, we're open to it. So mentoring, learning, education, collaboration, meetups, yeah, of course. So we're doing this, aside from learning about you, is also to kind of set up the station to what Thomas is going to talk about, what the Service Design Network is. So I think it's all related to what you are sharing with us now. Case studies, collaboration, real problems, examples, compassion. I love it. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for all your shares. So I'm going to move along to the last one. You are familiar with the Service Design Network. How did you hear about it? LinkedIn, Calgary UX. Calgary UX is winning for quite a bit. Okay, so I'm sensing that a lot of you heard for the first time about the Service Design Network due to this event. So that's awesome, because that's part of the goal of today's presentation. So thank you for being here again and being curious. And I'm just gonna go back to my previous presentation, and I'll pass it on to Thomas.
Sure. So yeah, just I'll give you a little snapshot of like what is the Service Design Network. It's a nonprofit, volunteer-driven organization. It was founded in 2004, and you know, it involves like-minded people who are curious and passionate about service design. Currently, we have 47 chapters globally. You know, and in each chapter runs independently, and sometimes we collaborate chapters. I collaborate several times with the San Francisco chapter, for example. We do workshops, you know, to get people to get some hands-on experience on real problems, and maybe with some organizations and their problems. I ran a series before on case studies, with case studies from around the world on different themes. And we also have guest speakers, panel discussions. Every chapter has some flavor of those things. And even at the global chapter, they have a global cafe, and they also run some additional events every month too. So yeah, you can check out our website and you will see what events are coming up, and a lot of our chapters do have a lot of virtual events, so you can attend them, even though you're still in Canada, attend things around, other areas around the world. So, and then, to check that out, look into other aspects of the events that we have there. And we have a pretty decent case study library. If you think about becoming a member, you can get access to that. We have a really good journal that's peer reviewed that comes out every 4 months. It's been going on for 10 years, and there's a nice archive of that Touchpoint journal. And what's good about it is, like, every 4 months they tackle a new theme, and service designers around the world share case studies or methods and tools related to that theme. So yeah, that's a little bit about that. Bernie, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'm curious how many people on the Zoom call today are familiar with what service design is. I wonder if we need to define that relative to UX. Does anyone want to tell it? Does anyone have a good description of service design, or want to share that with us? Or do you need an intro? We can. I'll try and weave it into my mini talk in a minute and talk about what service design is. But basically, we think in terms of how someone starts a journey. Maybe they're looking for a job, or they're trying to get services from a government agency, and they have a journey and they have different touch points. It might be with someone in person. It could be a screen that they're interacting with. And they move along this journey, and they've got some goal at the end of it. So we tend to think about things in terms of journeys and touch points and experiences. And some of those experiences are in person, some of them are electronic on a screen. But we're trying to think about the end to end, and also what were people doing before they came to your website? What are they going to do next? And so it's a kind of a more of the altitude might be higher sometimes than in your user experience design, especially when you're doing a user interface, etc. Does that help? I'm happy to. I'm sure Thomas and I could spend many hours telling you about this, and we would love to tell you more. Anyway, I'll get started. So I'm going to talk to you about, this is going to be a little mini talk about the talk I'm going to give in Berlin next month. It's about a couple of projects or best practices around designing for a gender inclusive campus. So let me just give you a snapshot of what that means. So a gender inclusive campus, this could be a university setting. It could also be at your work setting. But there are people navigating this world, about 5% of students, for example, who consider themselves have a gender identity other than binary male or female. They're transgender, genderqueer, gender nonconforming, or transgender. And when they come into a work setting, or when they come into their university setting, they don't see themselves reflected in the environment. And a practical way for them to be seen is on the application form, for example. If you ask someone what your gender identity is, if you ask someone about if they have a lived name or a preferred name that they go by, someone who's transgender may have a lived name that's very different from the name that was given to them at birth. And then there are also pronouns. So we're more and more familiar, especially in the United States and in Canada, I'm sure too, with pronouns. So trying to express to someone how you want to be greeted and recognized. So we put together in this project, one project we did, we put together this how might we statement. This is another thing that service designers do a lot of. So we put how might we thoughtfully and purposefully enable gender data into the campus system, so the student information system, the HR system for employees, so that any community member feels recognized in campus settings by their appropriate gender. So pronouns would be the most prominent way that they would, if those are shared in systems like on a class roster, for example, then someone could be greeted as they, them instead of he, him, if they don't identify with the he, him gender identity. And to do this in respectful and inclusive ways. And also at the same time, the institution has to consume this data. They need to potentially report on the data. And they need to secure it and make sure that the privacy is being met of the people that are supplying this information as they enter in as a student. If you go to the next slide. So this is an archetype of some of the students that we talk to in our research. So service design does involve research, a lot of research. So here we have a student called Vivi. Vivi is a trans woman, a sophomore university, and undergrad student who's doing economics. And Vivi goes by she or they. They'll interchange between those two. But Vivi was born, or on her birth certificate, she was born as a male, or that's what her doctor wrote down. And her parents named her Victor. So you can imagine if Vivi had to enter the university and not be able to use her preferred name, and she's presenting as a woman, that makes life very difficult for her. But Vivi knew at a very, very young age, maybe before 10, that she identified as female, and very strong feelings about that. And she was lucky because her parents are very supportive of her, and that's not the case for many of Vivi's queer friends who may be closeted, and university might be the first time that they're able to really live their true selves in their identity. So she was able to transition before she entered her freshman year, and she's in the process of changing her name legally as well. And in California, there's a law called SB 179 that allows someone to, without too much difficulty, go and change their name and their gender all the way back to their birth certificate if they were born in the state. So Vivi has many pain points. For example, if someone sees her legal name, they might out her, or that's called dead naming, if you call someone by the wrong name. And you may or may not be aware of some of the political and social culture wars that are going on in the US, but there's a lot of anti-LGBTQ rhetoric at the moment, and trans people in particular are receive threats. They're having their medical care cut, and they're really become a political a place for a lot of political disputes. So it's a really hard time for someone who is transgender in particular to be out. And in classes, it's pretty common for people to be misgendered, and misgendering for someone who is being called something that they don't identify with is like a little mini invalidation. So it's instead of microaggressions, it's like micro invalidation. So every day you're being told that you're not who you think you are, which can be very detrimental. And when you're trying to learn and you're trying to be a successful student, you've got this burden and barrier of not feeling like you belong. So on that first exercise we did, that Alex put up there, I put belonging, because that was probably the number one finding that we found in our research is people want to feel like they belong, and they need the institution to show them that they belong in meaningful ways, not just in the gender data, but they also in having it as part of their diversity, equity, and inclusion statements, investing in infrastructure like gender inclusive bathrooms and locker rooms, etc., and for there to be allyship on campus. Any questions? Just looked like a research. If anyone has any questions about what I'm sharing, please feel free to reach out to me directly or put something in the chat, and I'll try and catch it after I've finished. I've got one more slide just to kind of give you a taste of the complexity of this kind of project. As I said before, there are a lot of people who are going to be involved in a project to implement gender data and make those available for someone to enter into a campus system. And you'd think that would be pretty easy. We'll turn on the technology. Even though student information systems and HR systems can be pretty brittle systems, they do now have these options that someone can turn on. But when you turn them on, you have to make choices. You have to determine what options you're going to present. And there are no standards across the United States, for example, on what pronouns are being used. So we did a lot of research to understand what pronouns people wanted to be offered. We wanted to make sure that we had gender identity options that made sense to the population. And each one of those choices had an impact on the for the business, because the business on the business side, the institution needed to have policies and security and do data governance around this data that was now being collected. Who could see it? Who can't see it? When would you use a gender identity versus a pronoun? As it turns out, gender identity is quite private and you don't generally share that. But pronouns you might put on the directory or you might put into a roster. But a gender identity, especially transgender, can be very, very, very sensitive and could be quite dangerous if that information was collected, for example, by your some legal entity or for the state, which was done in, I think, Vanderbilt University. The Attorney General requested information about transgender students from that university, and they supplied it. You can imagine what it felt like for a student who's had their information turned into to the local, for the state government. And beneath this, we have the technology infrastructure. So you've got to be able to sort of navigate. As a service designer, we like to think of ourselves as facilitators and people that can bring together people that know pieces of the pie and help see how these things get stitched together. So the business might say, or the students might say, I want, for my pronouns, I want them to show up in English 101, but not in Bio 10. And then you go to the tech people and like, we can't implement that. That's way too difficult for us to do. So you have to try and figure out how you can execute on some of these desires and come up with how you're going to protect them and how you're going to take care of them. So one of the projects we did took over a year to do the research, to navigate between all of the basic human needs, business needs, and technical needs, to at the end deliver just pronouns into the student system. It was extremely complicated and very difficult to navigate because of all of the different people that have to be engaged and to do the work. On the left-hand side, you'll see there's a line that says culture and structure. You're really designing, when you're creating a gender-inclusive campus, you're really trying to impact the culture on campus. It's always in your mind, but nobody can change culture, right? But you're trying to influence it through this change. And you're doing this because you're trying to make the structural parts of the infrastructure support something that the culture doesn't currently support, and so on. Anyway, that's just a tease of what I'm going to talk about in Berlin on the day. If you attend the event, I'm going to talk a lot more about the pronouns and gender options we chose, the complexities, a little bit more about the complexities, as well as the some lessons learned about the project. And again, feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about this, and I'd love to hear your experiences if you've encountered this in your work, or you're interested in trying to be a catalyst for change on this topic.
All right, I'll go next. Yeah, so I've been running some workshops here in Chicago related to the workshop I'll be doing at the conference, and I'm a student at Second City for improv and comedy, and so I found the classes very immensely enjoyable, and I also saw a lot of connection between what I'm learning in class and how I run workshops in general that I found very useful. And the soft skills that you use in improv are great skills to have in your back pocket as a designer, not just a service designer. So even though the title of this workshop says service design, I think in general it's very helpful for all types of designers. So yes, and your way to better design with improv. So this workshop is very interactive. People don't need to have an experience in improv. I design it in such a way that it's going to be fun and interactive, where you learn different approaches to storytelling, collaborating, ideation, and prototyping through exercises and games. Next slide, please. So you might have heard of this before, but the mantra or the golden rule, yes and, in improv is also used in design. And in improv, it means like accepting others' ideas and building on it. The same way that in design, it can be very powerful that you can just continue to build on each other's ideas and see possibilities. Next slide. So there is quite a few different soft skills that are very powerful in improv that, they can enhance your skills in design. I'm just going to call out 5 of them. And one of them has to do with gifting. And the idea of gifting in improv means that when you're trying to set up a scene or a scenario, you build in detail of the relationship between you and your other participants. What's the relationship between you? What is the environment you're in? You might begin to describe objects. All these things help each other build the narrative. And the next one is about being highly adaptive, having an open mind to the situation as it unfolds, and also don't have a preconceived notion how the end outcome should be. Also be playful. As children, this comes very natural to us to be playful, and being playful and laughing go hand in hand as a child. There was a case study, there was a study done that said that 6-year-olds laugh between 300 to 400 times in a day. And as we become adults, we laugh. It takes 21 days to laugh that many times to reach that number. So, we have very, preconceived notions of what play is, and we don't do enough of it. But, improv, we embrace this. It's about, getting your imagination going, experimenting, activating your curiosity, and laughing along the way in this very supportive environment. And there is active listening. This means being present with the other people and remembering the details of what they said, and thinking about how you can build on that in a narrative, and not think about, quite often I also do, is like thinking about what your rebuttal is or what you should be doing and thinking next while you're listening, but just being very present with that person. And going along with that is being spontaneous and being in the moment, resisting the self-judgment that you might have in your mind or self-editing that you might do. Improv will help you practice that skill. So these are 5 of the things that I among other ones that I highlight and bring forward in the exercises and games of the improv workshop. So, just to bring a little bit of a taste of the workshop in, there's a simple warm-up exercise that we do, and it's called Oracle. And so I'm going to ask for 3 volunteers. If you can put your name in the chat. It's a very simple exercise. So please don't be afraid. There's no wrong way of doing this exercise. It'll be fun. So we have, who wants, all right, so we have Victoria. Who else? Alex?
Yep.
We need one more person.
It'll be fun.
Yes, please. You'll have a good laugh at this. All right, Shelley, thank you. So we have Alex, Shelley, and Victoria. All right, so how this goes is that you're going to operate as one voice in this exercise. And so each of you are going to work. So, for example, you're going to add one word to each other's response. So Alex would say the first word, Victoria would say the second word to build on Alex's word, and Shelley would say the third word, and it'll go back to Alex. She'll add the 4th word and so forth, 5th word and 6th word. And so you're going to work in response to a question. I'm going to ask you a very simple question, and you guys are just going to go ahead and respond to it. Now, once again, there's no wrong answer to this, but this thing is an exercise to help you try to think and listen to the other person very carefully. So, so my question will be to all 3 of you. So once again, Alex will go first. Victoria will add to it, and then Shelley, and then back to Alex, and then Victoria, and then Shelley. Does that make sense to the three of you?
Yeah.
Okay.
And add one word to each other's response as you go through. So you might respond to the question with a couple sentences, or it can be a phrase or one sentence. So you'll try to feel it out as you talk, adding on to each other's answers. So the question is, what does the future hold for UX design? Alex?
What does the future hold for service design? It will be
No, one word. Yes, one word.
Okay. Adoption.
All right. Victoria, one word to add to it. Adoption.
Adoption might
Shelley?
Expand.
All right, back to Alex.
On.
adoption might expand at the
Best.
Practices.
and
Broader.
Experiences.
for
Benefit.
Everyone.
Wow, okay, that's great. Thank you. That was very good for the first try. So this is one of the proven exercises that we do in improv, and sometimes as you do this a couple times, you get very fast at building on each other's, and actually it can be very comical and actually very insightful at the same time. So you got a little bit of a taste on this one of the warm-up exercises. Thank you for volunteering in this little game here. All right, so I'm gonna just talk to you a little bit about the conference coming up. As we know, it's in Berlin, and I'm going to talk a little bit. This conference, the theme of it is about catalysts for change, and I attended 3 other global conferences, and one of them last one was in Copenhagen, Denmark, and that one was on courage to design for good. And I also attended one in Madrid, Spain, and one before that was in Toronto, Canada. And what I like about these conferences, they often feel very intimate. Sometimes I go to other design conferences, they seem very large, and I find it, in the way it's set up, that it's easy to approach people and have conversations, and I enjoy meeting people from all different industries. And not all of them are service designers. So I met, people that are in design strategy, they're in UX, they're also in design research. And so what I like about the conferences, every time they have a theme, it's like it really goes at the theme at so many different angles, different industries, and they present different case studies. So like I get a glimpse to how design in service design works in many different aspects. And so I always find, even though I've been doing service design, a little over 7 years, I come away from that very energized, in thinking about my work, and I also make new contacts when I'm there. So I enjoy the keynote speakers and the follow-up speakers and the panel discussions and the workshops. And so, in recent years since the pandemic, they now have integrated more the hybrid notion of this, the virtual with the in-person. So if you can't make it to the on site, the virtual conference has additional workshops that you can attend virtually that not necessarily you have to be there in person as well. And now that these virtual conferences have been going on for a while, they have it running pretty smoothly now. And so anyways, if you have any questions, you can reach out to me, or Bernadette, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I've been to three the conferences. In fact, the first one I went to was in 2012. It was in San Francisco, which was in my neighborhood. And I went to the conference and it was like a light bulb going off for me, because it really spoke to me about service design, and this is how I think and how I operate and how I think about problems in this kind of on journeys, and just how I approach things. So that was a really transformational conference for me. I went to Sweden. I can't remember Stockholm, Sweden. I can't remember the year now, but it was again another some fantastic speakers. Just I love models and methods, and so there was lots of different ideas being shared that I could take back and go, oh, I could use that in that project. And then I was also in Toronto. In Toronto, I attended a workshop there on looking at how to measure the impact of design. And we went through a really great practical set of methods in order to look at how to measure things. And that was just really super helpful, because I was trying to justify at the time investments in a university that doesn't really want to invest sometimes in design. And then this conference, I'm really looking forward to it, because they're going to do, the person that's speaking ahead of me is also from a university and going to speak about their experience in Indonesia. And then there's going to be a panel after lunch where we're going to talk some more and share some more ideas. So just everything that Thomas said, and it's an investment to go, and you have to have the time and the funding in order to support it. But it's every one I've gone to has been fantastic.
Thank you so much, Bernie. And yeah, the conference is also happening online. So while it might be a little bit difficult to plan to attend in person, there's options. And yeah, now I'm gonna talk about some resources and links. I just put them in the chat. And so as I mentioned, I've been an ambassador of the conference for some months now. And it has been a great experience, because that has provided me with the ability to connect with other service designers, to learn about them, like where are they studying, or what kind of projects they are involved with. And yeah, just expand my network significantly around the world. And yeah, also to give back to the community, as they are a nonprofit. So it's a way to support their efforts that they um, work on, related to educating people about service design, all the different resources that Thomas talked about earlier. So yeah, it has been a great experience, and they are still asking for ambassadors. So since it's about a month or a little less to go, so if you are interested, you can reach out to me and I'll be happy to connect you. Or there's also the link right here that you can apply directly. But if you have any questions prior to apply, for sure, please connect with me. And yeah, just in regards to the conference, so Bernie is going to be one of the presenters, and then Thomas, he's running the workshop related to what we were exposed to today. So it's kind of separate, so you can either check the list in this link related to the different workshops that are offered, and you can maybe just select one or a different number of them that you may want to attend. And then there's also the ticket for the conference, either in person or online. So those are the options that you have. And I'll invite you to just click on the links and check what are the different topics that you can learn about. So as it was shared earlier, is Catalyst for Change. So there's a lot of case studies related to how having that approach related to look at problems in a different way. I think that's my favorite part about service design, the co-creation piece, but also looking into that facilitation piece. So even myself now, like I feel very lucky going through the program. Actually, Thomas was my instructor, as I'm dealing with a very big challenge at work, and being able to facilitate a session with my colleagues and look at, okay, how can we look at this issue with different angles and come with solutions in an hour. Like that is just amazing. So really, really thankful for this community and these opportunities. And there's also this link related to the Service Design Network Academy, as aside from offering courses to become a service design practitioner, there are different courses related to employee experience or facilitation. So they have a broad catalog, and they keep coming up along the years. So also please check them out. And in terms of discounts, so there's the discount code to become a member of the Service Design Network, and then you have access to all the different resources that Thomas touched base on earlier via a professional membership. And there's a lot of events aside from the resources that are available by being part of the network. And the very last link is the Service Design Network link, so you can learn more about what they do. And with that, I pass it on to Luis.
Any questions? Well, if not, I'm just going to warm up the audience, So a question for Thomas. Have you seen or have you experienced any improvement from your in your design skills or professional life thanks to doing improv?
Yes, I will say that I embrace changes as they happen quite often now and work, that there's requirement changes or there's org changes that happen that affect the project. I just realize I just roll with it. And so that's one thing. Is I think the other thing is, like, I'm much more curious about possibilities by accepting people's ideas and building on versus trying to tear it down and see what the flaws are or the weaknesses are.
That's fantastic. That's a great way to live life. Yes, and that's excellent. So Jess and any questions? Jess and any questions coming from the audience?
I have one if we need maybe a little bit more
Please.
warming up.
Jess and Alex.
Yeah, so my question is for Bernie, because I felt very related to what she was sharing in regards to how she approached the challenge she was dealing with. It's a completely different challenge I'm dealing now, but it's same situation. Like I always hear, there's the technicalities, right? Like the systems and the capabilities that you may have available. So running a lighting decision jam next week because I just felt like the challenge is pretty broad. So the initial, how might I have it, right? We have it. But there's a lot of different areas in the company that is like, but again, like the different capabilities and systems. So for this particular session, it's going to be mainly with directors. And then the idea will be to narrow it down to those specific problems that they may want to focus on to provide next steps and who's going to be responsible for that. The question that I have for you is, given that at a director level, they may not necessarily know the nitty-gritty of particular systems, or because there's some legalities into this project, or maybe legally wise what may be possible or not, would you suggest different sessions with also another kind of people in the room? Since an LJD is normally recommended, I think it's like 2 to 8 people, or do it simultaneously with different mini groups of people, or what would be your advice here?
So if I heard you correctly, Alex, you try to figure out how to make changes in the technology, but you're not sure if there's might be issues there, whether it can be done, legal issues.
Well, the issue, I don't want to say specifically what it is, but the challenge is related to let's call it marketing communication. So the first, I guess, roadblocks are related to, oh, the current system can manage these. Maybe it's going to take us a lot of time to establish certain pop-ups along the journey for the user. So many different challenges, right? But the main question for you is related to what is your approach when working with the stakeholders and then looking into that co-creation piece and ideation at what level? Like, would you say is okay, like the kind of participants I have right now, which is at the director level, or would you normally look into maybe having in the room also the people that have direct experience with the systems and they know the ins and out of the tools that the company have?
You could do it either way, I think, but I think if you can try and vet out some of the what seems promising from the might be really difficult ahead of the directors, so that you've at least kind of given them less to consider. Because if you have them go too deep, first off, they may not have the background, they don't want to embarrass themselves in not having that detail. So I think if you can kind of do some kind of pre-vetting of good possibilities of changes that you want them to get behind and investigate, that I think is helpful. I typically, it's, you want to get these executives or directors involved sometimes, and they may just, it may not be appropriate. It depends on your situation, but I typically find I'll try and vet things out with the people that are closest to it, and where they want to go into detail with you, and then you can kind of lift it up and kind of synthesize that to take it out for someone who can say that looks good, or we're not going to do that. But it's hard to, without being in the situation, I think you have to kind of suss that out.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. It's like for the sponsorship piece, it definitely makes sense to have at least some of the people that made sponsor the project. So that's helpful. Thank you.
Right, while we are waiting, Ajay has one question.
Everyone. Sorry, I just dropped a question very quickly. Maybe either Bernie or Thomas can answer. I was just curious to know if SDN was providing in some sort of service design education for younger people, and also would be interesting to know your thoughts around why not do that, right?
Oh, so younger people as in high school.
Say high school students. Maybe earlier than high school might be a little bit difficult because we're talking about complex stuff most of the time. But yeah.
That's been a little bit. It's funny that you brought that up, because that's probably the next group I'm probably going to engage. I did do elementary school kids already. Teaching them design thinking and using using ideas about design and service design to help them do user journey mapping. It was quite fun and engaging to have them design their hero, their favorite superhero, of how they would go to a Dunkin' Donuts shop and buy donuts, and or their favorite ice cream shop for their superhero. So but anyways, high school, I think it would be a great place to begin to do that, because I think, people are starting to think about their careers, and getting exposed to things like that would be great. So I don't know, you probably will see that in the future, me running, at least in Chicagoland, something that I probably have to engage the academy to see about, what we do, what their agenda is also for that younger audience as well. But that's a great question you have there.
I think there was a meeting from across the community about a year ago, looking into where are the opportunities for education, and I think that's a great place, and I think it would be really fun. I think it's high school students, it's a great way for them to figure out how to solve problems together instead of being individual contributors, and just approaching the world and how to address issues when they start working. It's a really powerful set of tools for them to have.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Right. Okay, waiting for the next question. I'm going to invite Shabnil and Greg to send me a direct message with their emails. Sadly, Meetup doesn't share emails, so I just look at the database and I cannot find it. But yeah, if there's any question in the chat or anybody from the audience would like to join.
There's a fun technique, and it brings in improv that we do in service design, and that's called body storming. And it's a way for you to think about, I've got a service, like I'm going to go to Dunkin' Donuts and get with my superhero, and you act out this whole service, and someone can be a screen, someone can be someone behind the counter at Dunkin' Donuts. And when you act out the process and the workflow, you can start, it gets pretty clear quickly what's working and what's not working. And then you can stop and go, oh, okay, let's try that piece again. It's really fun, and kids, that's a great tool for kids to kind of play and just improvise as they're going along.
I have a question. As service designers, are you usually brought in at the beginning and at the high level of a project, and then do you step back and it's taken over once you have a general plan or journey? Then do you step back and the details and execution is worked out by somebody else, or do you follow a project through typically?
I would say for myself personally, especially now I'm doing consulting, people normally come to me with some kind of problem, and they're not necessarily thinking this is service design. And so they're interested in the fact that I understand their space in higher ed. And so service design just becomes a way to sort of tools and methods for, engaging people from across campus and who are different silos and don't kind of see each other's work. And then trying to orchestrate their ideas and pulling them in order to try and figure things out. I've got a technical and a business background, so I can go deeper, and I'll hang around to see at least the phase 1 implementation through, and to tease out the things that people say they can't do, and be curious about their technical challenges or business challenges. But it depends on how your comfort level in facilitation, in engaging with different parts of the organization and trying to unblock some things that people might tell you they can't do. Thomas?
Sure. I will say that I enjoy being through the whole process, and I think the opportunities where I had the most ability to do that was when I was working in-house. When I did consulting projects, I'm usually involved with the first phase of just understanding what the problem is, or strategizing or planning, or doing some concept or some light prototyping. But in-house, I've definitely been able to see a project through from the very beginning to the launch. And on the more recent work, there's been 2 different teams. That there is the discovery team, and then there's the delivery team. And so I feel very comfortable in the very beginning of projects. It's very fuzzy, and we're trying to figure things out. That's my favorite playground to be in. But I also like the fact there's a great satisfaction of okay, we figured it out. Now we have to make it more concrete so that we can actually, the implementation team or delivery team can actually do something with it. And the design intent doesn't get modified too much, because we had some conversations along the way, and we invited them on early on in the project. So it's not like we're throwing something over the fence to them. So.
Thank you.
Any more questions from the audience? If not, I will drop one question. Yeah, this is for Bernie or Tom. Okay, obviously we have some UX designers in the audience, and yeah, if they are here, they are also maybe curious about service design. What have you noticed, or what can you tell that is a difference between being a UX designer versus a service designer? And I'm talking more about the activities and personality than, let's say, skills and maybe strategies. Bernie, Tom?
I think something that stands out to me and why I was pulled to me was I was interested in sort of these macro problems, and it's more about how do you kind of move the needle and it's a bit more closer to strategy, and trying to see the whole picture, and then also help people see themselves across the organization. So that to me is what attracted me. Yeah, that.
Thank you, Bernie.
I think for me, I think ever since I started design, I really enjoy collaboration with other types of disciplines, even outside of design. And I enjoy understanding that this is, the customer has this journey and we want to look at end to end on it. And there's also difference between one customer to the next. So there's so many different teams responsible for different channels or different touch points, and they don't necessarily have worked well together in the past. And I love bringing people together to like, okay, this is the challenge, these are the opportunities, and let's all talk about the pain points and let's prioritize them together. Let's see what we can come up with about the near future and the far future together. And so I really enjoy like bringing people together to look at not only the customer experience, but even like the employee experience and how we can improve that, the operations as well at the same time, because you improve that, it bubbles up and improves the customer experience.
Excellent. So we are talking about big thinkers and people that love bring people together. Excellent. Well, I'm just going to make a last call for questions. If not, I think it's a very good opportunity to offer a last comment from Bernie and Thomas. And if not, yeah. Well, okay. I don't see any more questions, so I'm going to ask Bernie and Thomas, any other thoughts or conclusions that you would like to share with us?
Now I'm curious about for the group here, if anyone has dealt with some of the problems that we've been talking about, but also just if you're curious about service design, please feel free to reach out to me. Also, if you're working on anything around gender inclusivity, pronouns, lived names, gender identity in your work environment, please reach out to me too. I'd love to share notes with you.
Yeah, so I will just say that same here. If you have any questions about the conference or the organization or about the profession, I'm open to meeting with anybody as well. And I would just say thank you for attending today. I think it's always good, no matter what, being curious about other types of design and how you can learn from them. I'm always inspired by other aspects of design in learning from other people in other design professions.